Dear you, have you ever had a moment where you stopped and asked yourself, why does it feel like I'm behind, even though nothing is technically wrong? Not behind in a dramatic way, not failing, not collapsing, just not where you thought you'd be by now. This feeling didn't come with alarms or warnings. It showed up quietly, usually when you had a second to think. Maybe it happened while scrolling through updates, or hearing someone talk about their next step, or realizing another year had passed, and you still felt unfinished. You weren't unhappy exactly. You just felt like you were standing slightly off to the side of the life you imagined you'd be living. You did what you were supposed to do. You tried. You adjusted. You kept going. That's what made the feeling so confusing. There was no obvious failure to explain it. No single mistake you could point to and say, that's why. Instead, there was this low-level unease. This sense that time was moving and you were moving too, but somehow not arriving anywhere that felt solid. You didn't talk about it much because it felt ungrateful to say out loud. You had things others wanted. You were doing okay by most standards. So you kept the thought to yourself and hoped it would fade. You told yourself everyone feels behind sometimes. You told yourself not to compare. You told yourself you just needed to be more patient. But the feeling didn't fully leave. It surfaced when someone asked about your plans and you gave a vague answer. When you avoided thinking too far ahead because it made your chest feel tight. When you wondered if you were wasting time without actually knowing how to do better. You felt pressure without direction, urgency without clarity. You weren't jealous of other people's lives. You were grieving your own expectations. The version of life you thought would feel more settled by now. The sense of confidence you assumed would come naturally, with time. The idea that by this point, you'd feel more certain about who you were and where you were headed. Instead, you felt suspended between effort and outcome. If you're reading this and nodding quietly, it's because this feeling isn't rare. Many people experience this subtle sense of being behind without being broken. It's the discomfort of living between chapters, where the old goals don't fit anymore, but the new ones haven't fully formed. And that space quiet, undefined, uncelebrated, can feel heavier than outright failure. We live in a world that constantly measures progress, timelines, milestones, announcements, achievements. It teaches us, often without saying it directly, that movement should be visible and linear. That by a certain age, certain things should be in place. And when your life doesn't follow that script, even slightly, it's easy to internalize the sense that you're behind. Your past self understands now that this feeling didn't come from failure. It came from mismatch, a mismatch between internal growth and external markers. A mismatch between who you were becoming and what you were expected to become. A mismatch between pace and pressure. You were evolving quietly while the world rewarded noise. You were reassessing values while others were accumulating achievements. You were questioning paths while others were doubling down on theirs. And because that inner work doesn't show up on resumes or conversations easily, it felt invisible. Even to you. You weren't stagnant. You were discerning. But discernment doesn't look impressive from the outside. It looks slow, indecisive, uncertain. And when you live inside that space for too long without validation, self-doubt creeps in. You start to wonder if your hesitation is wisdom or fear. If your pause is intentional or accidental, if your discomfort means growth or avoidance, your past self sees now that part of the pain came from comparing inner processes to outer outcomes. You measured your quiet reflection against someone else's visible progress, and that comparison was never fair. You were also carrying an unspoken belief that being behind meant being irresponsible. That if you were doing life right, you'd feel more settled, more confident, more ahead. So every moment of uncertainty felt like evidence against yourself, rather than information about what you needed. But life doesn't hand everyone the same timing. Some people build first and reflect later. Others reflect first and build more slowly. Neither is wrong. They're just different rhythms. And you happen to be in a rhythm that prioritized understanding over speed. Another truth your past self understands now is that growth often creates temporary disorientation. When old definitions of success lose their grip, but new ones haven't been articulated yet, you feel unmoored. That doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're in transition. Transitions rarely feel productive. They feel confusing. They feel uncomfortable. They feel like standing still while everything moves, but they are essential. You weren't falling behind. You were shedding expectations that no longer fit. And that process takes time, more time than most people admit. Once you understand this, the feeling of being behind softens. It stops being a judgment and starts being a signal. A signal that your life isn't meant to be rushed into a shape that doesn't feel right. Let me say this to you clearly, because you may not hear it enough. You are not behind. Not in the way that matters. Your life is not a race with a shared finish line. It's a process of alignment between who you are, what you value, and how you move through the world. And alignment cannot be rushed without cost. You don't need to justify your pace. You don't need to defend your uncertainty. You don't need to prove that you're trying hard enough. Trying quietly still counts. If you're in a season where clarity feels distant, that doesn't mean you've failed to plan. It means you're being asked to listen more closely. If you're in a season where progress feels slow, that doesn't mean you're lazy. It means you're laying foundations you can't see yet. One day, you'll look back on this period and realize it wasn't empty. It was formative. It taught you patience. It refined your priorities. It forced you to question paths that might have led you somewhere impressive but unfulfilling. You are allowed to take time figuring out what actually matters to you. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to redefine success on your own terms. And yes, there will be moments when the pressure returns. when you feel the urge to catch up, to rush, to choose something just to stop feeling uncertain. When that happens, pause. Breathe. Remember that rushing out of discomfort often leads to deeper dissatisfaction later. You are not meant to live someone else's timeline. You are not meant to feel confident all the time. You are not meant to have everything sorted by now. Being human includes periods of doubt, recalibration, and quiet searching. If you're reading this and feeling understood, it's because this letter isn't only for you. It's for anyone who's ever felt like they were doing their best but still questioning their place. Anyone who's ever wondered if they missed a turn. Anyone who's ever felt pressure without direction. You're not alone in this feeling. Even if it often feels solitary, take a slow breath. Let the urgency ease. Let yourself be where you are without turning it into a verdict. You don't need to arrive anywhere today. You don't need to solve your life right now. You just need to keep listening to yourself, to what feels right, to what no longer does. Your pace is not wrong. Your timing is not a mistake. You are moving. Even when it doesn't look like it. And one day, the movement will feel visible again. Not because you forced it, but because it finally aligns. Sincerely, you.